recollection of ever meeting this lady. None whatsoever.
You don't remember meeting her?
No.
In a recent interview, a former royal maid revealed shocking information about Prince Andrew's personal life. The interview was eye-opening and revealed shocking details. The former worker did not hold back when it came to discussing the specific requirements of royal duty, as well as the rumors and scandals that were doing damage to his reputation. In what shocking ways did she reveal information, and how does the public's perception of the Duke of York change as a result of these revelations? Come along with us as we explore certain aspects of Prince Andrew's life that are not widely known, as well as the discoveries that are making headlines. When it comes to children, who is the Queen's favorite? For a significant portion of his life, Prince Andrew was reportedly the Queen's favorite child, which is a concept that may appear to be implausible at this point in time. On the surface, it might appear unreasonable to assume that someone in the position of Queen Elizabeth II would engage in favoritism. On the other hand, there are sources that suggest the Queen had a slight preference for Andrew over Prince Charles, who was the heir apparent. The Queen had more time to fully embrace motherhood after the birth of Andrew, which may have been the reason for this preference when it came to timing. On the other hand, Prince Charles was primarily raised by nannies because the Queen assumed a significant amount of responsibility for his upbringing. One possible explanation for Andrew's more indulgent upbringing, which some people believe was superior to that of his older siblings, is that this may have been a contributing factor. It is stated in the biography of Prince Andrew written by Nigel Cawthorne, titled Prince Andrew, The End of the Monarchy and Epstein, that Andrew's upbringing caused him to be obstinate, impolite, and prone to violent outbursts. According to reports, members of the staff found him to be a nuisance, and his nanny gave him the nickname Baby Grumpling because of his obstinacy and his tendency to become angry. Even his own parents on occasion voiced their disapproval of his behavior. During one particular instance, Andrew is said to have made derogatory remarks about common people while he was watching television with his family. This led to Prince Philip's harsh criticism of Andrew. It was not just the royal household that was affected by Andrew's problems. He began attending preparatory school when he was 8 years old, and he quickly earned a reputation for being a bully. It is said that his teachers did not feel sorry to see him leave, despite the fact that his classmates were not the only ones who had problems understanding him. The same problems followed him to Gordonstoun boarding school, where he was accused of being boastful and fond of crude jokes. Both of these accusations were made against him. The students in his class referred to him as the sniggerer, and it was said that he was not one of the most intelligent students. Many members of the royal staff found Andrew to be impolite, and it was said that he was only able to captivate a particular category of people. According to reports, even as he grew older, his behavior was not even close to being royal. Furthermore, it was reported that Andrew was only attracted to blonde women who had large chests, and that his language and actions frequently crossed boundaries of propriety. Ken Wharf, a former royal bodyguard, described Andrew's manners as just awful, and another insider claimed that he was incredibly rude. It is said that when Andrew was younger, he was very good at making a good impression on women. It should be noted, however, that not all of his relationships received positive press. As an illustration of this, consider his relationship with the actress Koo Stark. It is said that the two did not waste any time in falling in love after meeting on a blind date in the year 1981. On the other hand, Stark's previous performance in the historical drama Emily, which was released in 1976 and featured a contentious scene, became the subject of widespread criticism. Until the couple's relationship came to an end, the paparazzi pursued them with unrelenting determination. The members of the royal family are frequently the focus of intense scrutiny from the media, and Prince Andrew was not an exception to this routine. In the middle of the 1980s, he took revenge on journalists in Southern California by spraying them with paint using a paint sprayer. These reporters were covering his trip. Reportedly, the glee with which Andrew carried out the act was more offensive to witnesses than the act itself. When it was all said and done, Andrew was compelled to pay for the damages. In 1986, Andrew and Sarah Ferguson tied the knot in a ceremony that was witnessed by 500 million people all over the internet. On the other hand, their marriage was fraught with several difficulties. Andrew went back to his duties in the British Navy 2 weeks after the couple had tied the knot, which meant that Sarah was left alone for extended periods of time. The publication Harper's Bazaar reported that the couple only spent approximately 40 days together each year. Sarah went through the challenging months of her first pregnancy with Princess Beatrice primarily by herself, because Andrew was absent until shortly after the baby was born. This meant that she had to deal with the challenges on her own. According to reports, when Sarah expressed her dissatisfaction, the staff at Buckingham Palace urged her to grow up and get a grip on her situation. As a result of the limited amount of time that they spent together, rumors began to circulate that Sarah was seeking solace in the company of other people. Meatloaf, a musician who passed away, was involved in incident number 1. Andrew was reportedly irritated by Sarah's attention regarding the rock star, despite the fact that the two were never romantically involved with one another. The allegations made by Meatloaf state that Andrew made an attempt to intervene during a conversation, which resulted in a physical altercation in which Andrew allegedly stated, "You are not allowed to touch me. I am a king." In the year 1992, compromising photographs of Sarah with another man, the millionaire John Bryan, were published in the media. This was the event that ultimately led to the dissolution of Andrew and Sarah's marriage. The photographs, which showed Bryan sucking on Sarah's toes, resulted in public humiliation and ultimately led to the couple's divorce in the year 1996. The scandal has not affected the friendship that she and Andrew have maintained with one another. It has been reported that the divorce was influenced by a number of factors other than Sarah's incident of sucking her toes. Due to the trauma that occurred with Bryan, the divorce was unavoidable. However, this does not imply that Sarah voluntarily participated in the formal separation of the couple. The fact that she wanted to hold a job was one of the contributing elements that led to the divorce. Sarah had the goal of establishing a career and becoming well-known, which was not something that was considered appropriate for a member of the royal family. As a result, she was able to transition into the workforce following her divorce without further embarrassing the family. Taking into consideration the fact that Sarah and Andrew's reputation had already been severely damaged, it appeared to be the right choice, despite the fact that it could have been better. If she were to withdraw from the situation, would it be possible for the prince to start repairing his public relations? On the other hand, it is said that he yelled at a maid because she did not completely close the curtains. With Sarah no longer in his life, Andrew's dependence on his crew was greater than it had ever been. Unfortunately, it was reported that his behavior did not change after he joined the Navy and began dating Sarah. No change in behavior was observed. Following the conclusion of their divorce, his former maid Charlotte Briggs shared her thoughts with The Sun regarding her time spent working for him. There are a number of anecdotes that do not speak well of him, and one of them is her assertion that the prince became quite hostile over a pair of curtains. According to the reports, he requested that she close them, but due to the weight of the items, she accidentally left a space between them. According to reports, Briggs was brought to tears by the yelling that occurred after Andrew learnt of the mistake. It is said that the maid made the decision to conceal herself from the prince whenever he was present because she did not want to deal with him after the reaction she had just experienced. When Andrew's collection of stuffed toys isn't neatly organized, he also experiences feelings of dissatisfaction. It has been reported that the prince is aggravated by more than just the curtains being slightly tilted open. In addition to this, it appears that he loses his temper when his collection of stuffed animals is not well organized. According to the New York Post, he possesses a total of 72 teddy bears, all of which are required to be arranged in a particular order, with the largest bears being placed at the back and the smallest bears being on the front. Due to the fact that Andrew appears to be very particular about everything being in its appropriate location, he has laminated instructions that the maids are required to strictly adhere to. These instructions are said to cover the handling of the stuffed animals while they are being washed, as well as the storage of them after they have been washed. When Briggs recalled being trained on this for a day, she found it strange that she had been trained on it. With dogged determination, he refused to relocate his belongings to the incorrect lavatory. In addition to Charlotte, there have been other maids who have had negative interactions with the prince. Jeanette McGowan is yet another individual who has had reason to question the actions that Andrew has displayed in the past. In the late 1990s, he made the mistake of placing his toiletry bag in the incorrect bathroom, which is the incident that she thinks about the most frequently. When Andrew found out that Charles was the owner of the toilet, he became hostile and refused to transfer his belongings or responsibilities. It has been reported by the Daily Mail that Andrew did not comply with the instructions until the Queen intervened. Jeanette, who described the situation as a peculiar standoff, stated that Charles conducted himself in a manner that was unquestionably appropriate for an adult in the position. In addition, there were no distinctions between the restrooms in any way. One of Andrew's favorite ways to woo women is to give them the opportunity to sit on the throne of the Queen. Within the context of the monarchy, the royal throne is a representation of the Queen's authority. It has also been reported by the Daily Beast that Andrew uses it as a method to woo potential girlfriends. It is said that the prince has a habit of seating his potential conquests on the throne in order to impress each and every one of them. He does it for everyone he wants to win over, including the former supermodel Caprice Bure, according to a source who revealed this information. In an interview with The Sun, she revealed that Andrew had taken her to Buckingham Palace on multiple occasions, and that on one of those occasions, the prince graciously allowed her to sit on the throne. In the year 2000, this took place, which was a few years after he and Sarah had divorced. It was reported that Caprice was thoroughly entertained, despite the fact that she and Andrew never developed a connection with one another. He was known as Air Miles Andy, due to the fact that he traveled by aeroplane quite frequently. Andrew was well liked by a large number of people when he was younger, which allowed him to get away with a lot of questionable behavior. Nevertheless, his reputation has changed ever since the divorce was finalized. Additionally, the increased media coverage of his questionable actions, such as his propensity for extravagant spending, has not been of any assistance by any means. It has been reported that the prince is not afraid to spend money, particularly on adventures that involve traveling. Air Miles Andy is the nickname that has been given to Andrew by the media due to his fondness for flying everywhere, even when it is not absolutely necessary to do so. As an illustration, reports indicate that he made a request for a helicopter to transport him to Oxford. Andrew was dependent on Royal Air Force aircraft on other occasions in order to travel to Scotland and Northern Ireland in order to play golf. As a result of his frequent flights, he has racked up a significant bill over the years. The amount of money that Andrew spends on his travels is enough to make a lot of people in the United Kingdom angry. In 2003 alone, his flights cost a total of $325,000, which is equivalent to approximately $435,000 in today's currency. Now, after 5 years, in order to maintain the original word count, the following is the version that has been grammatically corrected. The decision that he made to pay $177,000 to take a private plane to the United States was, of course, met with severe criticism upon its realization. It is clear that the prince has a long-standing interest in flying, as demonstrated by the numerous air miles he has accumulated. The year 2014 was the year that Andrew completed the equivalent of 3 trips around the world. This is the case regardless of whether or not he is currently serving as the ambassador for international trade for the British government. It would appear that Andrew is unable to resist the urge to board a plane, and he does not appear to care whose money he is required to take. Attempting to use her connection to Andrew for the purpose of monetary gain was the source of the scandal that Sarah caused. Despite the fact that Sarah was no longer Andrew's wife after the year 1996, she continued to be critical of him. Fortuitously, the prince's relationship with her led to yet another scandal in the year 2010. As a result, it was unsuccessful. According to reports, Ferguson made a promise to a third party that she would put him in touch with Andrew for a significant fee because she was in desperate need of financial assistance. Due to the fact that the prince was serving as the international trade envoy at the time, the contract was extremely valuable. On the other hand, Sarah was not aware that the individual she was conversing with was a journalist secretly working undercover. Due to the fact that he disclosed the recording of their conversation, the Duchess was compelled to issue an apology for the scandal. She was adamant that her ex-boyfriend had nothing to do with the situation. Andrew has decided to invite questionable individuals to attend some of the birthday celebrations for his daughter. In the event that members of the royal family are hosting an event, it is reasonable to anticipate that a significant number of attendees will be well-known figures. The unfortunate reality is that this is not always beneficial. In particular, it seems that some of Andrew's guests have been quite skeptical, particularly with regard to the birthday celebrations that he has planned for his children. For instance, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and the disgraced co-founder of Miramax were among the guests who attended Beatrice's 18th birthday party. Since the incident that occurred in 2006, each of them has been arrested for engaging in inappropriate behavior, and they have all been sentenced to extended periods of incarceration for their respective offenses. After a number of years had passed, Tarek Katoni made an appearance as yet another controversial party guest. There are reports that indicate that Andrew accepted the present that the weapons smuggler had given to the princess. Back in 2012, he was accused of using a word that was considered to be offensive while he was speaking with a political aide. It is possible that your reputation as a public figure will suffer substantial damage if you use the wrong word. People need to be careful about what they say, because there are some terms that were once considered acceptable but are now considered unacceptable. During a conversation with a political aide, Andrew was accused of using a derogatory epithet, which is how he became aware of this information. Until 2019, there were no reports of the incident that were made public. However, it was reported that the incident took place in 2012 when the prince allegedly made use of a term that was extremely out of date. There were reports that it was directed at Rohan Silva. According to Buckingham Palace, Andrew appears to have avoided any consequences, and the palace has denied that the incident even took place. On the other hand, this is most likely due to the fact that he was dealing with more serious charges. In 2016, the prince was responsible for causing significant damage when he crashed through a pair of gates. Despite the fact that it may have taken a number of years for allegations concerning Andrew's use of offensive language to become public, the same cannot be said for an incident that occurred in 2016. During this particular instance, the prince destroyed the gates of Windsor Great Park because they refused to open for him. It seemed as though the sensor that analyzes the presence of a car was experiencing some kind of malfunction. Andrew made the decision to force his way through the fence, despite the fact that he could have traveled an additional mile to eliminate the obstacle. His automobile and the gates were both damaged as a result of the move, which caused a great deal of uproar among the British public. A number of individuals expressed their belief that any typical individual in his situation would be subject to criminal charges for irresponsible driving and criminal damage. During the time leading up to Eugenie's special day, Andrew made fun of Harry and Meghan. Due to the fact that they are members of the royal family, Andrew and his daughters possess a great deal of power that is not available to regular citizens. Because Charles is not the oldest of the Queen's children, the prince's side of the family is frequently ignored in favor of Charles. This is because Charles is the child of the Queen. The fact that Andrew appeared to make a disparaging comment about Harry and Meghan's wedding prior to Eugenie's wedding may be due to the fact that this has caused his relationship with Andrew to become strained, as reported by various sources. As a result of the increased number of attendees, he stated that her ceremony would remain the same. He made the observation that in order to accommodate all of their friends, they require a church of that size. According to the interpretations of users on the internet, Andrew was implying that his wife and nephew are not well liked. Over the years, he has allegedly maintained a few friendships that are questionable. It goes without saying that the quality of your friendships is more important than the quantity of them. It is unnecessary to have hundreds of people surrounding you if they only offer support to you when you are in a difficult situation. Andrew has not always had the best track record when it comes to his friendships, which is a very unfortunate fact. In the past, he is said to have been involved in a number of questionable associations, including one with a dictator who had previously taken power in Libya. Reports indicate that he had a meeting with the individual in 2008 and gave a lecture at St. James's Palace for the purpose of presenting his Africa investment portfolio. These events occurred only a few years prior to the year 2011, when he was murdered by rebel militants. It is said that David Rowland, a British financier who became famous for his status as a tax exile, is the subject of another purported friendship. He suffered significant damage to his reputation as a result of his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. The fact that Andrew has had previous interactions with questionable individuals has unquestionably caused his reputation to suffer. On the other hand, his personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein has been the single most detrimental factor to his reputation. According to the allegations, the man took his own life in 2019 after serving time in prison for the crimes of trafficking and assaulting women. It was not clear how serious his offenses were at the time of his arrest, despite the fact that he had been arrested in the beginning of the 2000s. Immediately following the completion of an exhaustive investigation that revealed what he had done, inquiries concerning Epstein's associates began to emerge. Due to the fact that Andrew had been friends with the financier since before his initial arrest, he eventually became one of them. From the very beginning, there were some individuals who started to question whether or not the prince was aware of Epstein's behavior or whether or not he had any involvement in it. During the course of 3 separate incidents, a woman came forward to accuse Andrew of mistreating her. In a short amount of time, those who were questioning Andrew's innocence were able to establish grounds for doing so. In October of 2019, Virginia Giuffre made a public statement in which she accused the prince of engaging in inappropriate behavior. Specifically, she stated that Andrew had 3 personal encounters with her, the first of which was allegedly in London in the year 2001. Ghislaine Maxwell allegedly gave instructions to Virginia, who was 17 years old at the time, to carry out the same actions that she had performed for Jeffrey and Andrew. As a result, she went to a nightclub with Andrew and his friends, which ultimately resulted in her developing a close relationship with the prince. According to the allegations, Epstein used threats and fear to coerce Virginia into doing what Andrew wanted during the other assault incidents, which reportedly took place in New York and on Epstein's Island. Andrew made a vehement denial of the allegations and argued that there was no evidence that could be considered credible. As one might have anticipated, Andrew addressed all of the allegations that Virginia had made against him. Due to the serious nature of the accusation, he would not acknowledge it even if it were actually true. On account of the fact that he was a member of the royal family, it was unfortunate that his assertion of innocence was not sufficient to put an end to the controversy. Because of his controversial history, many people were hesitant to put their faith in him over Giuffre, particularly in light of the Yes Me Too movement. On the other hand, it was the prince's defense that he asserted he had never had the opportunity to meet Virginia. He made an effort to argue that the photograph, which depicted the two of them together, might have been an example of photo manipulation. At the end of the day, Andrew attempted to clear his name by giving an interview. However, this did not assist him. Although the purpose of the interview was to clear his name, it ended up making Andrew's situation even more difficult. For the most part, the royal family does not publicly acknowledge scandals. However, in this particular instance, they were unable to remain silent. In the month of November 2019, Andrew was given the opportunity to take part in an interview with BBC Newsnight. Unfortunately, the statements that he made did not convince a significant number of viewers that he was innocent. The prince stated in the interview that he couldn't attack Virginia because he was at Pizza Express with his family on the first night. This prevented him from attacking Virginia. Another justification came in the form of the assertion that Andrew was unable to sweat because he was experiencing an excessive amount of adrenaline during the Falklands War. After that, he continued by stating that he did not feel any regret for being friends with Epstein and that he had never shown any particular expression of sorrow for the victims of the financier. Some people later referred to the interview as a car crash, as if that wasn't enough to make things worse. After completing the interview, he resigned from his position as a royal. Andrew would not have been able to avoid these allegations without suffering any consequences if it weren't for the interview with the BBC. In a short period of time following the infamous interview, it became public knowledge that the prince would retire from his position as a royal. In his statement, he expressed his unequivocal regret for his association with Epstein and expressed the hope that his break would be sufficient to prevent the king from experiencing any further humiliation. It was mentioned by Andrew that he would be taking a break for the foreseeable future, and it was quite possible that he would return after the scandal had been resolved. During the course of a few months, this would disappear. The allegations of abuse that Andrew made continued to be prominent in the public consciousness, despite the turmoil that surrounded Meghan and Harry's departure a few months later. The prince's predicament then became even more dire than it had been before. The Federal Bureau of Investigation asserted that Andrew was not cooperating with their investigation into Epstein. The year 2020 was very difficult for a lot of people. However, in addition to his worries about his health, Andrew was also dealing with another problem. Prince Andrew's reputation faced significant challenges as legal and financial troubles mounted. Despite claims from his team that he had not been contacted by the FBI regarding Jeffrey Epstein, U.S. Prosecutor Jeffrey Berman stated that Andrew did not cooperate with their investigation. The prince's staff denied this, asserting that Andrew was never approached by authorities. Financial woes also arose after Andrew and Sarah Ferguson defaulted on payments for a Swiss ski chalet purchased in 2014. Isabelle de Rouvre sued the couple for $6.7 million, but the debt was eventually resolved in late 2021 after the chalet was sold. Meanwhile, Virginia Giuffre filed a civil lawsuit against Andrew in 2021, accusing him of assaulting her when she was 17. While the UK's Metropolitan Police chose not to pursue charges against Andrew, Giuffre's case proceeded under New York's Child Victims Act. In early 2022, Andrew was stripped of his royal patronage, military affiliations, and the title His Royal Highness, distancing him from the monarchy. Buckingham Palace announced that Andrew would defend himself as a private citizen. As public scrutiny intensified, Andrew deactivated and privatized several social media accounts, further signaling his retreat from the public eye. Attempts to dismiss Giuffre's lawsuit were denied by a judge, leaving Andrew's legal battles unresolved and his reputation severely damaged. On the other hand, Andrew's name was not included in that arrangement. In addition, the judge does not agree with the assertion made by the solicitors for the prince that the allegations are not credible. If you have watched the video up until this point, it indicates that you have enjoyed watching the video. Make sure to subscribe and don't forget to activate the bell icon that represents notifications.